Okay, everything is set. Shall we start, Stéphane, Linh?
Okay. Hello, good afternoon, everybody. It's my pleasure to introduce this research program. Before starting, I would like to underline that we will have 3 speakers for this afternoon. Myself, sorry to start with me, for a few word introduction on the inequality and environmental changes in the Mekong River Basin. After, we will have my colleague Linh, what Linh will develop with you, for you, is the result, is the heart of the project. And after, I will come back for a few more slides to describe a little bit more the output of the project. And the last session of this plenary session will be a video clip. My colleague Benjamin Buclet from CREED and myself, we built a few weeks ago to introduce a potential research and capacity project in the region, in the Mekong River Basin, based on at least the result we have in hand through the research program, the Mekong research program. And after, we will have some question answer with you, if you don't mind. So just let's talk. We are talking about a research program, Inequalities and Environmental Changes Nexus in the Mekong River Basin, scoping and systematic review. I would like to thanks again my colleague Linh, who was with me in charge of this study, and she make a very hard job on that, about to collect all the literature on the topic. But I want also to thanks my colleague Etienne Espagne, who is based in Paris at the AFD with the French Development Agency, and also Alexis Drogoul from IRD, the Research Institute for Development, is based in Hanoi. And 4 of us, we work on this project since 1.5 years with other teams, and I will details to you that in the coming slide. Oops. Okay, this Mekong research project is funded by the European Union, and is part of the European facility for a research program on inequalities in developing and emerging countries. This program is financed with 4 million euro from the European Commission, and is coordinated by the French Development Agency in Paris. The research project supported will be used to identify the most relevant approaches and policies to fight inequality. In other words, their goals is to outline solution, what is quite important. In this line, 22 research projects are being financing for 3 years. It's already done from 2017 to 2020. At urban level in emerging and developing countries, or at global level. They are exploring various thematic facets of inequality. For example, just to mention, taxation and budget policies, social protection, health, education and employment, but also access to housing and water services, or agricultural practices, etc., etc. So the genesis of this project is coordinated by the French Development Agency in Paris and is implemented by the representative office in Hanoi of IRD. You have the link of this institution on this slide. And in collaboration, a strong collaboration with the Erasmus Plus project WANASI. The project is coordinated by Nantes University, and this WANASI project is focused on the production, management, and outreach capacities of research in the field of water and natural resources in Southeast Asia, and especially in 3 countries, Cambodia, Thailand, and Vietnam. And if you want to have more information about this project, we will be finished in 1 month. Please have a look on our website, and you have the link on the slide. So why this project, and why is so important for us to share this knowledge? First, maybe is the need of the systematic mapping and systematic review on inequality and environmental changes in the Mekong region. At this quail, we are working in 5 different countries: Vietnam, as you see on the map, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, and Myanmar. The purpose of this study, this research, is to identify the knowledge on the topic, but not only that, also the gap in link with inequality and environmental change nexus. What we expect from this research is a scoping review or systematic mapping on the topic, but also a systematic review, and we will have more information from Linh about that. And also, it's quite ambitious project. In parallel, we will have 2 working papers and 2 policy dialogue as output. But not only that, we will produce a collective book before summer, who will include not only the result of the research project, but also some case study. I will details in a few minutes. So what is scoping and systematic review? Let's come back to the definition from Armstrong and Al in the publication of 2011. Systematic reviews use, so first is come from medicine and biology. And since maybe 2 decades, social sciences use this approach to identify and to make research on literature, to identify the knowledge and the gap, but at the basically it's come from medicine and biology. So it's quite a rigorous approach, and we have a different step to follow to be in line with what our colleague from medicine used to do. So is the systematic reviews use a transparent and systematic process to define a research question, search for studies, assess their quality, and synthesize findings qualitatively or quantitatively. As you see, it's a very huge research project, and we have to follow some crucial steps, as I say, to define the scope of the research question. So it looks like literature review, but it's much more than that, as we will try to explain to all of you. Is more exhaustive search. We are working in different and several databases, use different tools, especially test lists, to ensure comprehensiveness of the search. Each literature article or book during the screening could be excluded, but this exclusion have to be justified. We search also in the gray literature and with a critical appraisal with transparent criteria. This is the first definition we can have on scoping and systematic review. It is a very long process, as you can see in this slide. We start August, September 2019 with on November a kickoff meeting. We put all together some different institutions in Hanoi, including some experts. And it was the starting point with all this contact to discuss the criteria for the screening. And we will come back again to this criteria, especially Linh. To identify all the literature, we built in different countries, in 5 countries, different teams. So this research, this scoping and systematic review involve, if I remember well, around 15 persons for the screening. We have at the beginning between 2 and 3 months preparation about the framing, to identify the database and to work on the equation and test list. The equation and the PECO. PECO is P for population, E for exposure, that means environmental changes and policy driver, C for comparator, I mean before and after the climate events, the change between location, community, and country. As you will see, we include in our research project the last 4 decades to select all the publication, and O for outcome, inequality. That means environmental changes leading to inequality and vice versa. Also, inequality can have, impact environmental dynamic, as you can imagine. And we have a scoping question, and we will focus about the existing literature about inequality and environmental changes nexus. So this is the preparation and the first month of the research. After that, the search online start during 2 months, building different teams in different countries. We have different steps for the screening. We start with the title of the literature we identify. At this step, we was only 3 people to select based on the title of the article or the chapter of the book of gray literature, if it could be selected or not. And after, we go to the abstract screening. Title and abstract screening, you see, it took around 6-7 weeks. It's a lot of data. We start, if I remember well, with 18,000 publication on the topic inequality and environmental changes. And after that, after title and abstract screening, came the hard time to read the full text. And the full text screening, it's a lot of work during many months. And in parallel of the screening, we was in touch with, for the systematic review, with some experts to discuss some question for systematic review and critical appraisal. And as is mentioned in this slide, behind the working paper and the policy dialogue we will produce in 2 or 3 weeks, middle of March, we have the ambition to produce also knowledge through a collective book and a study case study in the 5 different countries. So you see, it's a very short time research program and very ambitious, but we see the end and we are very happy to share with you the result this afternoon. I would like to take the opportunity this afternoon to thank the teams, the 5 teams we identify and we work with in the different countries. I would like to thank first Chiang Mai University, and we work especially with Mr. Asakit, Mrs. Nile De Wild, Mr. Shanokung Nungtawan, and Dr. Charlotte Trang Interberger, sorry for the pronunciation, who make wonderful work during a few weeks working with us. A big thank also to my colleague Phuong from the Graduate Academy of Social Sciences in Hanoi, to Clara Julien, who is making a PhD at the École Française d'Extrême-Orient, the French School of Far East Asia in Ho Chi Minh City, and also in Ho Chi Minh City to Bui Thi To Huynh and Mrs. Chen Tiong Tham from University of Social Sciences and Humanity. In Cambodia, we work with the Center for the Study of Humanitarian Law at the Royal University of Law and Economics, RUE, in Phnom Penh. And thanks to Ms. Tan Boravin and Mrs. Vadanet Hing. In Laos, our partner was the National University of Laos. We have here Ms. Kana Phafon Pakunton, Mr. Phisit Silaran, and Ms. Phongun Vavongton. And in Myanmar, the last country, we work with the director of the Thilan Research Center, Mr. Ning Antung, and a freelance consultant in Rangoon, Dr. Miang Zhao. I would like also to thank the expert committee during the review, who work on the test list, who was with us during the kickoff meeting in November 2019, and who discuss all along the process the PECO equation, population exposure, comparator, and outcome. And especially, I would like to thank our colleague, Christophe Gironde, who is working at the Graduate Institute of Genova, and Daniel Eward, who is the project coordinator at the Mekongland Research Forum in Chiang Mai, if I don't make mistake. And that's it for my short introduction about this research project. I would like to give the floor to Linh, who will, the key expert on the project. So Linh, if you can share your screen, I will stop sharing right now. And if you can share with us your slide, it will be great.
Thanks a lot, Stéphane. Could you hear me well?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Hello, everyone. So the slide is okay, I hope. Okay, I will just go ahead if, yeah. So thanks a lot, Stéphane, for the really detailed introductions and summarizing like what we have done in the last year, a little bit more than 1 year. And also thanking all the team that have been working with us. And so in following with the introduction, so I will go ahead with introducing you to the methodologies as well as the results of the systematic mapping. So of course, Stéphane mentioned we have two parts. It is systematic mapping, or we call scoping review, and the other one would be a systematic review. At this stage, the results stay at the mapping part, because the review will come in the next month when we analyze further on the topic of land tenure and rights issues in the region, as it popped out as one of the biggest topics in our database. So I just skipped this part because Stéphane already mentioned about the topic. Just remind you a little bit about the PECO. So what we are building is the equation for searching on the database. So it necessarily being built with the expert by identifying the right keywords as well as to use the test list. The test list is the several more like 13 papers that must be included. So in that way, we try with the equation and make sure that those papers come out at the result. So we justify our equation are good enough to continue searching on different databases like Web of Science, Science Direct, SciPub, sorry. So the topic is inequality linking to environment. So inequality in this term would be also about the access to resources, the impact from the disaster like climate change and different natural disasters. So people are being affected differently. It also the inequality in the sense of the impact from the policy. So different policy like land use, water use, or the fish allocation, like fish resources, space allocations, or the forest policy. Or recently, we also have the climate change adaptation policy, and they, in return, affect the people differently. And another one would also inequality in the sense of like people having different chance or sometimes having no chance in participating into the policy making process. So that would be the other aspect. So in that way, we identify different keywords in terms of populations and the exposures, and then the outcomes. So the keyword have been discussed like back and forth with the expert from the beginning. We also having some changes on the way because we figure out some more keyword. So we have been searching on 5 teams for the rate literatures as well as the online database. And the result we had, in total, we collected 18,200 items. Sorry. And thanks to Zotero, that it worked quickly for us to identify the applications. So we came up with a 14,570 items to enter the screening. After the title reading, abstract reading, we did in a team of 3, like between me, Etienne, and Stéphane, and we identify more than 7,000 items to go on with the further reading to make sure that we could include the items. And within that, we identify almost 1,000 items, which is like media or blog posts. It really it sounds relevant to our work based on the general idea. But of course, because of its characteristic is a bit different than a scientific work or a report or a study. So that way we separate them, and also for the time constraints. So we decided to move on with the 6,042 article, report, book sections to go on with further reading. And it was done, I don't remember exactly, but since July last year. And we have just finished it a week ago. So in total, with the, I will come up later with you to share with you the kind of how we justify our inclusion. But in general, we have a 2,355 items that being included. The rest are, some of them are being actually overlapped, which means the same authors actually like different articles of different paper report, but using the same set of database. And in that way, the same set of study, and that way we kind of like include them, but also store them in a separate folder as an overlap paper. It's the same for book as well, because we only looking at like chapter or collective book, but the book itself also relevant. And unfortunately, there are certain full text we could not access. Some of them are not available somehow, and some of them are just like the book we do not have the access at the moment. Of course, if we do have more time, we could like contact the authors or trying to get it, but due to the time constraint, we just accept that. So I mentioned before, we by reading full text, we actually include certain papers. And then for those papers that are being included, we also go on with the coding. So we code these information for extraction from the papers, like to make sure for the data for analysis. So on paper, it needs a presence of on populations, exposure, and the outcomes. So missing of one of them would be excluded. Of course, sometimes the comparator happen it to be missing in some paper, but because if it's talking about certain group that definitely vulnerable group to climate change or to land reform, so in that way, the comparator factor is not really a certified criteria to exclude them. So, and when you see at the bottom, like the green field part, those ones are actually about the quality, judging the quality of the paper, like to see the consistency, the sampling, the comparative matching, or any bias in the paper that actually hinder the quality. At the stage of scoping review, we do not really look at the quality, we only look at the information up here. And then when we enter the systematic review for the topic of tenure and right, it will be like the quality will be assessed. And in that way, we will limit it more the number of items. When we started with the scoping, we had the questions of what is known so far from the existing literature on the topic of inequality and environmental change. Then after that, we identify the topic that will go further for the review, which will come later in the coming months, that we will go further. And the question at the moment would be, how are the relation between tenure rights and the impacts of land use and water use change in the Mekong regions. So in that process, we will inform you probably by email for the results of this analysis. Okay, yeah. So this would be the result of the scoping review. So among those 6,000 papers, we had like those papers actually having published from the 1961 until 2020. So I had to say it's April 2020. So probably from that moment until now, there are more papers being published, but we do not really have time to go back to update that. So in total, we have 2,355 items being included are relevant to our topics. And then they are published from 78 until last year. So when you look at like the data sets, that also it could be explained by the production of knowledge. Probably it's more on the review journal. So you could see there's 66% of 2,300 papers that actually journal articles. And we have reports from institutions and also from NGO that would, thanks to our effort and from the team from 5 countries to look for report from different institutions on the websites. And then the rest, we see the book section, thesis, and conference paper. Looking at the countries, and we actually include the, of course, working on the 5 countries of target. Of course, we also having those papers working on Southeast Asia, Mekong region, Asia, or global scale. And just looking at the country-wise, so we actually saying like a lot of research, majority of research has been done in Thailand, like the biggest one of data, and then Vietnam. And then we have Myanmar, like Cambodia would be the next one, and Myanmar having more research in the last 5 years, given the contribution from the NGOs and institutional sector. And then we have little data from Laos actually on the topic. So the explanation could be about the research facilities that would be dominant in the 2 countries of Thailand and Vietnam. And that could also give us an idea of the capacity building need for the other country as well. But of course, there could be a little bias from our search. It could also be, but that would be kind of slightly influence our search to retrieve lower amount of item from Laos and Cambodia. So I also trying to extract the data in terms of like years. So it appears really clear like how much scientific or like knowledge production have evolved in the last decades. So until 90s, somehow little works have been published, and mainly it's from Thailand on the topic of environmental changes and inequality and how it impacted people. And then there is big booming in the next following decades in 2001 until 2010. And you could see now like slowly like country getting more attention on that topic. And it could also be explained in terms of somehow development in economic development are being boomed in 1990s. And it also the same for agrarian change to commercial crop, like rubber plantations, maize plantations, and coffees in different countries. And it's more like the beauty fixtures of development during the 90s. And then entering the 2000s, somehow the impacts of the activity of hydropower also, sorry, I did not mention, are the impact of being clear. So how it impacts the people and affecting the livelihood of different people. So in that way, from 2000 until now, like more research actually talking about the vulnerability of people to the changes, and then different people being affected differently. So, and I actually separate the next 5 years and then the 2016 and 20, because they're more really a lot of research being produced in the last decades. And in this draft, it also reminds us again, like how dominance, the work have been in Thailand, like the work focusing on Thailand and Vietnam. And then we are having growing interest about Myanmar. So this would also be an exercise, well, to extract from our data IU Voice Viewer program, to extract from the kind of co-authorship to see like whom actually did the research in the regions. So because the picture is a bit large, so that's why I'm only giving you like one kind of smaller pictures here. Like the bigger the circle is, would be like more research being published by that authors. And then I also zoom in at one corner, which is we could see the connection between authors. So it's like, it's really nice to see how much connection between authors, and depending on the topic, like for example, Phuong, this would be more the topic on the forestry. And this linking the work from Ian Bear and then Jean-Christophe Castellar, Mayo Canel-Lazar, they have been working a lot on like land grabbing concessions on the regions. And then we also have some other big, like it's scattered around in this draft. So I can only show you one corner of that, but also to give us an idea. Of course, the big percentage of research have been published by, we call like foreign experts, but the foreign experts, those have been working and staying in the region. So they could also be considered to like really knowledgeable about our topics. And then we also see like more and more work are being published by our like Vietnamese, Cambodian, Laotians, Thais, and Burmese as well. And the internet, like some organization like internet, like NGOs, like Usbright Internationals, and we have some other as well. Yeah. So that would be about the co-authorship workings on the topics. Then when we look at the database and where the impacts of environmental change, if to put that, being investigated mostly, we could identify the two biggest one would be rural area and the mountain and the highland area. So to explain this, it had to thanks to one of the really biggest program that coordinated by Chiang Mai University on the Mekong Land Governance Program. And then we also see somehow rural area or rural people are the conventional or traditional target of population being impacted by environmental changes. It's also giving us an idea how like peri-urban area and urban area having also a good amount of research, but peri-urban area having less amount of research on that. And there is a growing interest about like urban area and how the poor urban people does not mean like they are good in their livelihood, but the poor in the urban area, they actually facing a lot of vulnerability and problems dealing with the changes or the environmental stress. That actually linking to when we look at the populations, actually, like looking at the rural area and the highland, so we could see the farmer and smallholder, an ethnic group, Highlander, or huge tribe or indigenous people. They are actually the majority of population being targeted in the research. The poor, we actually, if you look at the list, yes, some of them might look overlapped, but somehow we are picking up the terms from the focus of the papers, also giving us the idea of different school of thought, like how they term the groups of people, like either they term it's a farmer, smallholder, or they term the poor people in general. There's some group of people that being less presented, like the work of non-citizenship actually, it also mainly published from Thailand situation, and then from migrant peoples, and then we also have some publications about fisher and seafarer, like the one in, I think the south of Thailand, if I remember well. And small and medium enterprise, street vendor in urban area, and veteran, they are also being presented, but at really at limited amount in our data. We also have some part like people with decision making and elite people, because in some cases it's not really conventional, of course, but in some cases they also facing difficulty, for example, in tsunami in Thailand. Then the recovery process being supported by the government, but the policy have been too much of focusing on the poor and the small holding, and somehow those elite or like richer people are having less chance to get the support from that situation. So that's also an interesting part to look at. So this is just an before showing you to the kind of the linkage between the environmental change and the populations, and environmental change and the impact on the peoples. I just listing some of the criteria before that because the graph is a bit too big, harder to see. So we actually looking like in terms of environmental change, we have like related to land would be different policy and reform. It's really dominant, for example, land reform in Myanmar or in Cambodia, and different policies on giving land for concession for different investments. Land grabbings, acquisition linking to resettlement and displacement of different peoples. Land concession for commercial cropping as well. The water aspect would also go for pollution, erosions, and then the hydropower buildings. Yeah, we have the agrarian change, and then we have the mining part, pollution part, including pesticide, arsenic in groundwater, and other toxins like cadmium or lead pollutions also are being take out as one topic. Biodiversity, climate change, and natural disaster. We put natural is in the as special because sometimes disaster doesn't mean linking to the natural dynamic alone. So different impacts of the people, or different impact of environmental change on peoples. So in general, many papers actually we came up with a really general impact with livelihood insecurities or well-beings. And of course, some of them like really focusing on like it leading to the poverty, or it actually causing the people life for flood, for tsunami, or sometimes it's also linking to the pollutions, well, the toxins. Displacement and migrations also being the impacts of some of the environmental changes. Migration alone, sometimes it's really hard to judge on the study itself. People also focusing on that because people migrated not only because of environmental change, because there's also other factors that they consider like economics factors or just trends in the region. The other impact, or we can, it really big presented in terms of inequality, like the human rights and conflict as the impacts of the environmental change on group of peoples. Like the land tenure insecurity, people getting evicted from their land or displaced because of concessions or acquisition for projects in Myanmar, in Laos, Cambodia. Social issues is also focused. We will see like conflict happening between downstream, upstream farmers also happened. And also because after forest conservation and protection policy, the land becoming less available and somehow creating more conflict between farmers. And other purpose also, it creates social differentiations, and then it lowers the social cohesions of the community. The gender impact is also one of the bigger focus, like it's a growing interest in the region in the last 10 years, like more work on the gender deviated impact related to environmental change. And then the last would be about the risk and the adaptation capacity, resilient capacity. So different group of people having different capacity to adapt or to be resilient to the change. So this would be, is also again voice viewer, that it just looking at the keyword from the titles and the abstract alone. And it just actually just came out concisely, not coincident, it's the same with our analysis in terms of number doing manually by reading the full text. Showing the three dominant themes in our data. The first one would be about the conflict, the land right, the issues of concessions, the land grabbing issue related to conflict and the reform in the regions. And then the next one would be about climate change, the vulnerabilities of the people from the climate to the climate change, as well as to natural disaster. And then on the green corner, you could see is about pollution. Actually, the pollution, how affect pesticide, the quality of water. So in this, and we actually given the time constraint, and so far we still not finished this. So we will focus on this biggest topics of land tenure and right to further analyze the. We make the synthesis, our like narrative synthesis, the database that being available. So it's not about quantitative or meta data extraction, but it's more qualitative analysis or synthesis. And hopefully from that data, we're already having some concrete recommendation for policy actions. So this would be our main reasons. So if you could see here the distribution of literature across environmental change and populations. So if we see here like the ethnic group, the poor and the farmer are actually the one are being targeted on the, this is a heat map. So the darker the color you see, that would be more research have been done on that relations between like, for example, farmer and resource reform, like land reform, or water reform or forest reform. Forest reform sometimes mainly more natural part or protected area actually. And then if we see a little bit of like women are being the target of research in terms of like gender deviated impact, also a growing interest. This is like slightly less than the other countries. Community in general, like we mentioned, because we do not really focus on the quality. So whenever when screening, so whenever the research actually targeting or talking about how community being vulnerable or at risk to the environmental change, so community but also being presented a lot, especially to disasters like extreme event, flood, drought, salinity intrusions, sea level rise, climate change, of course. So rural people also presented. So the distribution of evidence across, if we look at the environmental change on the lab news, and then the outcomes would be the impacts of environmental change on different group of people. So we would see well-being in general would be stated, but of course some of the other part, they are really looking directly at the right issues. So how people are losing their rights because of resource reform or policy. So with the some policy actually excluding different group of people. Of course, there's some growing work especially in Thailand and Vietnam. For example, for forest management that to combine with community-based forest management. And in that way that we could manage the forest better, but it's a growing kind of knowledge and also still in discussion like how policy could be. Conflicts and then resistance. Sorry. The conflicts and resistance. So we see here they after like with the national part and then the protected area, like conflict and resistance also happen in different countries and also to the policies. And then to the resource depletion would be the reductions of different resources. So so we also see in risk and capacity corner is also presented quite a lot, especially adaptation resilience. And then for in terms of like disaster, climate change are being the biggest topic in the recent year that talking about how vulnerabilities of the people to the climate change. And then we also see here like some research is a growing interest about like actually spelling the terms of inequality and injustice. So it is not very much so far that focusing directly on that. And of course, because our work, we focusing on the impact of environmental change. And then we are linking that to inequality because the current data like really limited amount of research have been working directly on the terms of injustice or inequality regarding environment. So by looking at this kind of graph, we could also see like those empty, sorry, I'm showing it my with my hand on the screen. So with these empty space, so we could actually see like less research are being presented, and that could also be the research gap that could be identified for further study. And for those aspects that being researched thoroughly before, there is big possibility that we could already extract some good recommendation or well-grounded result or policy action already. So just to summarize a little bit, so what had been dominant in the data that we have been doing that systematic mapping. So the issues of land issues, the water issue like hydropower, pollutions, climate change, natural disaster, they are really dominant. And the growing interest on pollution like air pollution, water pollution, and the toxic or pesticide issues. The report in terms of like agrarian change and how it affects the peoples are actually less presented. Actually, we separate the agrarian change in terms of land concession because there are like huge research on land concession, like how, for example, rubber plantation, it's actually giving land concession on the highland of Laos or Cambodia, like from foreign investors like Vietnam or China. So well-being and the right and the risk and capacity are actually the more represented theme as the impacts of environmental change. So the part about social disruptions, so focusing on the culture part and how it affects the people like mentally or the social cohesions of the community after the changes like displacement or certain policies or after disaster being visited in the study, but not much so far. So migrations also, and then we have the right issues over forest and water and the fish resources also especially. So we have a lot of research on the right to the land, but somehow the right to the fish resource, for example, is less presented. So we already mentioned before the poor, the ethnic group, the highlanders, smallholder, rural community, they are very much presented in the research, and we found less research on fisher migrant, refugees, and then the women or gender, or sometimes maybe it's also men in terms of gender deviated impacts is very less presented. So in terms of knowledge gap, definitely what we mentioned above already, like those research on the group of people that still less presented in the data. Urban and peri-urban poor, they are getting more attention, but of course still need more research on how their livelihood being affected to the current environmental stress in the city. Its pollutions is the adaptation policy actually displaying them from one place to the other, like how they resettle and how they suffer or how they adapt to the situations. So research and policy discussions on the impact and alternative strategy for environmental and research governance are urgently needed. Of course, we heard about community-based forest management, but still more work needed on that aspect. And also giving the fact that communities on, for example, on the highland, they have changed themselves, like their practice have changed. So it's really hard to say like on current peoples these days, they are still practicing kind of the idea of protecting the forest as before, or the similar, like not on ethnic group are doing Sweden farming anymore because they are learning the commercial. So those evolution or change in their livelihood and their practice need to be taken into account in the further research and policy discussions. And as mentioned before, environmental inequality, inequity, or injustice are being new terminologies, and more work need to go direct into that direction, really focusing on and putting attention on how people being affected differently, and then the existing inequality actually shaping the impact of the environmental change on them. And the other way around as well, because lacking of certain capitals or capacity to sustain the livelihood, for example, so people cannot join or support the idea of conservation of the environment. Like forest conservation cannot sustain if the ethnic group cannot live without the forest production like timbers or collection from the forest resources. So that have been the, like we try to quickly giving you the idea of what we have been doing in the last year. So hopefully it clear enough, but I know that the data sometimes is a bit too like condensed, and yeah, but any questions or any clarification would be welcome.
Thank you very much, Linh, for this very dense and rich presentation. But before maybe asking some questions, sorry, I would like to introduce shortly the book, the collective book we are working on. And after we will have a question answer session. And after this session, we will propose to you a new project we are working on with Benjamin Buckley, who is already online. So Linh, if you can, please do not share anymore the screen, and I will share mine to talk a little bit about the collective book.
Yeah, actually, I'm trying to find a way to open the Zoom again. It's only showing this. Okay, here.
Thank you, Linh.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's very nice. Okay. Wait a minute. I will be really short. Okay. Okay, so as I mentioned at the beginning of this session, one of the outcome of the research Mekong project, it will be a collective book, because it's very interesting to publish, but not only, it's also to put case studies link with our topic, and to show that the research, it's also a synergy, an institutional synergy between a different partner. So the collective book, I think the book will be available before this summer. Will be published at IFD and IRD edition in France. We will have, as you see on this slide, different chapter, 8 chapter, and the chapter will involve different institutions. Especially, I don't want to mention myself and Linh, but we will have Chiang Mai University will be involved, and Australian National University. We'll have Ottawa in Canada, Ottawa University, and also University of Laval. And we will have we are very happy to publish this chapter number 5 in the book, who is writing by a researcher who is the director of the Tea Land Research Center in Myanmar, and it's quite nice to see that, especially when you look at the situation in this country. And we will have also a chapter from Chiang Mai University, and the last one from France, from University Paris 1, Panthéon-Sorbonne, and Bordeaux University. Let's go to the map and to have more information about what we are talking about. We will have a chapter, the first one, at the regional level. It will be the chapter we will propose with Linh, Etienne Espagne, and Alexis Drogoul, and myself, about land tenure and impact, tenure right and the impacts of land and water use changes, and based on the systematic review we did. We will have one case study in Thailand, in the Young Basin, about social identities and unequal vulnerabilities from, well, maybe Linh, you can help me. I do not remember the author. Maybe Daniel Eward, I'm not sure of that. No, Daniel Eward is another chapter, but it's about, well, you have the topic, you will have the author soon. We will have, in the chapter 3, we'll be back to Cambodia and Phnom Penh. This chapter is also a working paper and policy dialogue. We will be published middle of March, and the topic is about sound pumping, sound miners in Phnom Penh. And we will have also in Laos a case study from our colleague in Canada about social justice and mining exploitation in Laos. As I mentioned, we have the chance to publish a paper, the chapter 5, on the Shan State China-Myanmar Economic Corridor by a researcher and activist, Stéphane, who make a great field research in the last month in the north of the country. And we will have, and this is the paper of Daniel Eward, in Thailand, the chapter 6 will focus on identify maize production, corporate gains for smallholder pens in 3 different sites. And we will also have a paper, a chapter focused on the Mekong Delta, about rural-urban migration, in response to environmental changes. And the last chapter will be on the Mekong inequality and environmental changes from Paris 1 University and Clara Julien team, if I remember well. And that's it. And this is the structure, institutional, and the topic we will develop in this collective book in the next coming weeks. It is for me for this short presentation of our book. I think it will be useful maybe to come back to the research project introducing by Linh and myself just a little bit before to go to the new project we would like to develop with Benjamin Buckley. And we can open question answer session for 5-10 minutes if you don't mind. So if you have any comment about what Linh developed previously, if you have some comment or question, you are more than welcome. You can write it and ask to take the microphone and to ask directly Linh about what she introduced.
Yeah,
so please.
Before that, Stéphane, as we practiced this morning, everyone unmute. Thank you for your work.
Yeah, it's a nice pedagogic way to motivate the
Absolutely.
the army. Okay, I see. Nice, thank you, Zepang. So please, if you have any comment or question, it's time. No question, no comment. If it is the case, we can go directly to the video. Do not hesitate. Maybe we can come back to the research project after if you don't have any question right now. It will be fine too, no problem.
And of course, we have the email of us, like Stéphane and I, and then the other researcher in the team. So in the future, or if you happen would like to would need more information, we are willing to communicate.
Okay, so let's go to the ETIS project. As you will see, this project, this regional project on research and capacity building is based on 15-20 years of experience, and will include include some recommendation from the Mekong research project. And it's a very ambitious project, and we will be very happy, Benjamin and I, and also Linh and Zepang. I'm supposed to hear from you after this short video, around 20-25 minutes. Let me share that with you right now. Wait a minute. One second. Okay, here we go.
Hello, my name is Benjamin Buckley from Crete. I'm happy to be almost with you to conclude your day of work with the presentation of a project we've been working on for more than a year now. The project is called ETIS, for Environmental Transition and Inequalities in Southeast Asia. My presentation is organized as follows. I'll first give you some elements of background and context. Then I will explain why the project is important and present the proposed approach and the planned activities. Finally, and quite quickly, I will present the foreseen organizations and a quick presentation of the guy in charge for the plan of the activities. This before telling you how you might want to participate to the next steps. So first of all, a few elements of background. This project is the fruit of more than 20 years of experience in different professional areas. Its foundation are constituted by about 10 years of research in human and social sciences, 10 years of academic research, of course, but in the framework of international scientific cooperation programs. You know, this kind of program where scientific activities are really embedded in strong collaborative frameworks where human relationships are key to success. And during these years, gradually capacity building became central in our activities, to the point that we got involved in this project 10 Dow Days, which has been implemented from 2009 to 2017, based on the organizations of university level summer school dedicated to human and social methodologies research. This is actually where Stéphane and I met. He was responsible for this project in Dow Days, and I was at this time head of the capacity building department of IRD, Institute of Research for Development. And IRD was supporting the 10 Dow Days. This project lasted almost 10 years, and when after in 2017, it became clear that it was time to scale up. So this is when we elaborated WANASE, an Erasmus Plus project, Water and Natural Resources in Southeast Asia. This is WANASE. More precisely in Cambodia, Thailand, and Vietnam. WANASE really complemented the 10 Dow Days model with networking activities, targeted training sessions, and a very strong articulation with non-academic stakeholders. You can see here a picture of the participants of last year's Asian Water Platform, which happens annually. It gives you an idea of the scale of the project. It was in Phnom Penh, and actually it was when we started the elaboration of ETIS. We started ETIS with a problem tree workshop that happened in Phnom Penh this year. And this is how we started to design the project ETIS. So here we are in the middle of WANASE, thinking about the future. And this is in fact the first component explaining the context of ETIS. Because as a matter of fact, it happens that we have eyes and ears also, and we live on the planet, the only one we know where we can live, so Earth. And this is a planet where pollution, destruction of ecosystems and species, loss of biodiversity, and of course the global warming and related hazards. It's a planet where we can see increasing inequalities within and between countries. All that happening around us, things that now are measurable in our lifetime. We can measure it, experimenting just few years of life we have had. All this, while scientific truth is being challenged, sometimes by the most powerful people. I'm thinking of the soon former president of a big power in the world, and also by a mass of people. More and more people believe that Earth is flat. There is even a flat Earth society that has been created, joining 15,000 people. And all these elements, looked at in the mirror of our professional lives are exposed. These elements have raised many questions, and maybe the main one would be, how is it that with all the scientific knowledge we can access to nowadays, how is it that the situation of our societies in relation to nature and environment, in relation to such unfair socioeconomic situations among us, how is it that the situation reached such a critical point? Have scientific communities done something wrong or missed something? And most of all, could scientific geopolitical and geographical characteristic. We observe a common trajectory of economic growth, a common geopolitical constraints and opportunities among these 5 countries, but also relating to their neighbor, China in the first place. And of course, sharing similar ecosystems and biotic characteristics that contribute to some kind of cultural and social unity among their diversity. In sum, this context of interdependencies may prove a strong case in favor of a regional approach to promote a serious long-term development strategy being consistent with both social and environmental sustainability. Okay, so in this context, what is the rationale of our project? Here's the joke. Environmental transition seems to be a bit like sex for teenagers. Everybody agrees that it should happen, but they don't really know how to make it happen. It's not from me, it's has been said about big data, but it's quite the same thing, environmental transition. There's a perfect consensus, a broad consensus about action, the need for action, but we don't have solutions to cope with so many interrelated issues. Global warming, climate change, pollution of ecosystems, loss of biodiversity. Moreover, increasing inequalities all over the world, but particularly in Southeast Asia, actually, we've looked at the figures. Increasing inequalities make it hard to formulate realistic and acceptable socioeconomic transformations that would be called by environmental transition. So we should add other issues to be taken into account, such as, of course, the global economy, integration of these countries in the global economy, what we call progress. What does progress mean, actually? We can talk about well-being, some talk about happiness. These are questions that should be integrated in what an environmental transition should be. Of course, all these issues altogether appear so relevant, and their complexity is so much exacerbated by the actual situation of the pandemic. So the project ETIS that we've been thinking about for a while really makes sense in the actual situations. And I would say they even become an emergency to do something. So for us, facing all these complex and interrelated issues, our conviction is that knowledge must be produced in order to inform the profound transformations of socioeconomic systems, addressing the complex understanding of how inequalities and ecosystems interact with each other. This is basically the rationale of the project. So what is the approach and what are the activities? ETIS is a 6-year project based on a 4 wings approach. 4 wings because it looks a little bit like a butterfly. Yeah, a butterfly. The first wing is about knowledge production. It is about undertaking an ambitious and extensive production of scientific scientific knowledge on the different dimensions of the inequality environmental transition nexus, topic that you probably have been talking about all day long. So this is what it is about, the production of scientific knowledge. We fall into the field of sustainability science, also called science of interactions, definitely interdisciplinary. The idea of this projection is to understand the relationships of ecological and social phenomena. And it is important to say that the main research questions will be defined within the ETIS scientific unit based on the results of the project Inequalities and Environmental Changes Nexus in the Mekong River Basin. So what you've been talking about all day long will be one of the key elements that the scientific unit, I will present later, the scientific unit will work on to define the main research questions. In terms of activities, there will be this, the first step will be the establishment of a high-level international scientific committee, which will be responsible for the definition of these research questions, also the definitions of the PhD subjects, and which will be also responsible to accompany the project all 6 years, and also to write a white paper, which will be the conclusion of our project. We will have the international recruitment of 30 PhD candidates coming from the 5 targeted countries, but also from Europe and Canada. We imagine that maybe 1/3 will be from Europe and Canada and 2/3 from Southeast Asia, but it's entirely theoretical so far. And also 19 master's degree candidates who will after that start PhDs once the machine is launched. And at the end of the project, we plan to launch a demand-driven call in order to strengthen the laboratories which will host the PhDs and the master's degrees. The second wing is connection to society and networking. It is about linking researchers and their institutions to other stakeholders. This is definitely innovation for us, is to look for direct integrations of findings into concrete actions, collective practices, and public policies. The idea is to undertake PhDs integrated to an ambitious framework of activities. This is what we have called the PhD 4.0 in reference to the concept of Industry 4.0, which is really a connected way of producing goods for the industry and knowledge for us. So you can look in detail at these ideas in the concept note you probably have under your eyes. In terms of activities, it is about establishment of a communication team dedicated to engagement and integration of non-academic participants in research activities. We have to be realistic about our limitations. So we need to have professionals to accompany us in these communication issues. This is not something we have learned in our universities. This is about writing the white paper I was mentioning earlier, a white paper on how to implement the environmental transition in the context of socioeconomic inequalities, and the writing of annual learning papers. The third wing is communication and dissemination. The idea is to go one step further once we have connected research to society and through networking. The idea is to go one step further and make it possible for other people beyond academic circles alone to use the knowledge produced. Okay. I'm a bit lost in my presentation and I'm recording here, so it's awful because I know I can't look at you to see if you understand what I'm saying. I'm just looking at the wall in front of me, so it's really not easy. Okay, so yes, idea to make sure the use of knowledge is possible, we will work on the format and visualizations that scientific knowledge takes and do much more than writing scientific papers or do academic presentations in colloquium or conferences. The objective is that scientific progress should be considered as its true value by decision makers. This is really the point. So activities are planned as follows: 2 regional fora for academic and non-academic actors every year. Two of them during the project, resulting in collective position papers with our moments of meeting between the academy and non-academic actors. It seems easy to say, but it's very hard to organize and to succeed in that. Creation of, creation of a communication media, creation of illustrations, infographics, photos and videos, website, SEO, search engine optimization, also management of community, management of press relations. So this is what we foresee for communication and dissemination. And the 4th wing is about capacity building, and intense capacity building effort to ensure leverage effect, because the idea is that it's not a one shot, even if it would be a 6 years one shot, so maybe 6 shots, but anyway, it must be sustainable, as we say. Okay, so we need a strong capacity building to start a virtuous cycle leading to this science-based monitoring of the environmental transition. So the idea behind this capacity building efforts is that skills needed to do good research go far beyond scientific skills only. Communication, legal issues, how to write proposals, how to manage resources, human and financial resources. All these peripheral skills are often missing in higher education institutions in Southeast Asia, but not only in Southeast Asia. Right? So this is what capacity building approach is about. And concretely, it will be webinars, training sessions for PhD and master's degree candidates, but also for research managers and people who really do the job. And we will also do that through 3 regional summer schools organized in a closed environment to ensure total immersion of participants and also foster intercultural exchanges and networking. All right, so as a whole, why ETIS and why should higher education institutions get involved? So if you're not convinced that the project is interesting and groundbreaking, this is a few elements that I want to highlight. We think that ETIS is the opportunity for higher education institutions to position themselves as really actors of change and really enabling science to influence collective decisions. It is also the opportunity to integrate an international network of institutions committed to a responsible and pragmatic approach to research. This is the idea of connected science. It also implies profound changes in the way research is carried out and in the use of scientific results by economic and social actors. And another important point is that this connected science approach and the idea of the pilot idea of PhD 4.0, these are things that can be replicated in other contexts. It is also one of the added value of the project. And at a whole, the objective is to identify solutions to the most urgent socio-environmental problem faced by humanity. It sounds a little bit dramatic saying that, but this is really what it is about. So very quickly, this is the organizations we imagine. You can see the butterfly down at the bottom of the screen. The rest of it is not particularly original. You know, there is a management unique steering committee, like in any project. I need to have that the monitoring and evaluation system will be set up in order to really accompany the project and be sure that we reach our objectives. This is something we are used to, but I want to stress out your attention on the scientific unit, which is probably the innovative side of this organization. The scientific unit, which is a pluridisciplinary group, about 15 high-level scientists, equally from Europe and Asia, and maybe Canada, because we might work with Canadian institutions. This scientific unit will really be involved. It won't be here as a scientific justification. I mean, we are definitely in the middle of a scientific and research project here. There's a lot of production of knowledge, and the scientific unit will not only work on the core science of the project, but also will be integrated in the management unit so that they will be involved in any decisions, and also will be responsible for the writing of the roadmap for the realizations of environmental transition in the context of inequalities, the white paper, this roadmap. And finally, the planning. Well, it's a little bit ridiculous to show planning like that from now for the 6 years coming on, but just to show you that we have more or less planned how it will be organized. Of course, the details have to be defined, and this is precisely what will we do this year. These are the next steps. We will start setting up a support committee with a letter of commitments in principle, expression of interest of stakeholders, academic and non-academic, in Asia, Europe, and Canada. The second step, which might be a very big step, but still, is to constitute a pool of donors committed to support the project. And finally, we will organize a formulation workshop joining involved partners, which something, if the situation allows us to do it, it will happen in the second semester of the coming year. Actually, for these next steps, we are currently joining 4 institutions to fund, to give us seed money to move on these next steps. So this is already a very big satisfaction to know that some serious institutions, Stéphane might talk to you about, are involved and almost agree. We are still waiting for some answers, but most of them have already got involved, agreed to follow us in these next steps. So finally, I need to, I really thank you for your attention, and hopefully, if I can, I will join you on the platform, I think soon, to participate to the discussion if the plans and the travel allow me to do so. So bye for now, and I hope to hear from you very soon. Oh yes, I forgot to tell you that of course you can see our email addresses, and if you're hungry to contribute and participate to the project, we will be glad to hear from you and to answer you, most of all. That's the point. Okay, bye for now, and talk to you soon, hopefully.
Okay, talk to you now, Benjamin. You are here with us now. This video clip was recording last December. Is why sometimes but the timing is not really logical, but the project's still here, and we have to develop it this year. Benjamin, maybe are you online? Can you hear us?
Yes, I'm online.
Okay, very good. Very nice to hear you. Maybe to see you too. Okay. So maybe you have something to add in link with what you hear about the Mekong Research Project and about what you introduced during 25 minutes. It's quite funny maybe to see yourself like this and make some correction and to add something, I don't know.
No, actually, yes, it is kind of a little bit of schizophrenic to watch myself. I was about to say, well, thank you very much for this very interesting presentation. Well, you're very welcome, you know, like Gollum and his ring and his precious. But no, I could listen very little from Linh presentation, but I think it's an excellent starting point to the wing of knowledge production of ETIS, because it will give us, and it will give the scientific unit the very an excellent panel board of the situation of knowledge in these issues, even if the area might be not entirely covered, since we included in ETIS Myanmar and Laos, but I think it's an excellent start. So hopefully some people assisting to this presentation will be willing to contribute with some extra information and extra knowledge about what has been produced about these issues in other countries, to complete these data. So yes, this is what I can say about the ETIS project. The only thing I can say is that we are currently working on the institutional strengthening of the project, including not only academic institutions and also development banks, but also NGOs, big NGOs and companies. And it is more complicated for us since obviously, as you can imagine, we are familiar with development institutions and also with the academy, of course, universities and research institutions. We are less familiar with big NGOs and also with big private companies, which must definitely be included in ETIS governance, as well as public institutions. As you know, if you don't have the support from public institutions in many countries, like in Vietnam, for example, it is absolutely not possible to work in the research area. So this is our challenge for this year, and it will be very appreciated if you're interested in this project, that and you have connections and ideas to help us include in this adventure NGOs, big public institutions and companies. Otherwise, I hope the video was clear enough to expose the major principles of this project. And of course, if you have questions or comments, please be welcome.
Okay, thank you, Benjamin. So any reaction from the audience about the research project and the Mekong Research Project, and also about the ETIS project with research capacity building and to propose another paradigm to make research in Southeast Asia?
Can I ask one question?
Sure. Well, so can you please, I don't see you. Can you introduce yourself? Yeah.
It's Cheyenne from Chiang Mai University.
Excuse me, Mr. Cheyenne. I didn't recognize your voice. And I was not able to see you. Sorry.
The question is, perhaps within, from the introduction of the new concept note, I would like to hear more about the PhD 4.0. What does it mean? Benjamin?
Yes. Well, PhD 4.0 is a concept based on what Industry 4.0 is. You might be familiar with Industry 4.0. Industry 4.0 is about connecting objects to your everyday life. And it's the major difference between a PhD 4.0 and a regular or a normal PhD is this connection side. And the objective is to have, since the elaboration and since the definition of the object of the PhD, to have a collaborative approach, including organizations, institutions, companies, or whatever stakeholder might be interested in resolving a certain problematic. So this is, since the definition of the problematic, the elaboration of the subject, a participative approach, so connected to stakeholders, then a regular, if you think about PhD committees, basically, usually they join only people from academy. Well, not always, but the majority of the cases are joining people from the academy. And here we would have a PhD committee, a research committee composed of also other stakeholders, so connected to society. And there is also a major effort of communication, because we consider that it is an emergency that scientists develop some skills and abilities to communicate and to disseminate their knowledge. And why is it an emergency? Because time is running, and we need to base changes that are necessary. These changes must be based on scientific knowledge, and it's a kind of competition, because we are competing with any other producer of information who are very powerful to disseminate irrationality about what is happening in our societies and in our planet. So yes, basically, if I try to resume to synthesize, is a PhD connected to society, connected to stakeholders, connected to other people out of the academy, using communication tools and approaches that are most of the times out of the scientific activities so far. I hope it's clearer now, Cheyenne.
Yes, yes. Is it similar to the concept of engaged PhD?
In the concept of engaged PhD, you have more like a militant side, which would not be necessarily the case in a PhD 4.0. But in a way, it's true that the similarity is based on the importance of the individuals in this initiative, because we really want basically to have super doctors, you know, yes. Not only a brilliant scientist, but also a brilliant communicator and a brilliant manager, also in terms of managing energies around him or herself. So there is a kind of personal engagement which goes further than only the academic world. But I would differentiate it from some kind of advocacy or militancy.
Thank you.
And I will add the profile of this PhD 4.0 is in line with the sustainability science, which is more and more developing, especially by IRD all over the world. And in terms of governance, they would like to develop this kind of approach, much more connected with a concrete topic and reality on the society and environment topic.
Okay.
Any more question, comments from the audience about this ETIS project and the Research Mekong project? Well, it's okay. Okay, so if there's no more question or comment, we will maybe close the session. and we close the session to meet all together tomorrow afternoon on Wednesday 24 at 2 p.m.
Yeah.
We have two sessions. Maybe Mr. Cheyenne, you want to say a few words about the two sessions tomorrow afternoon, or?
Yeah, tomorrow morning we will travel from here to Chiang Rai, right?
Yeah.
It takes about 4 hours before we arrive at the destination. Then we will commence the afternoon session around 2 o'clock.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay. So we will have two sessions.
Yes. And then we also have evening session. We will show a film of the Mekong River.
Okay.
And on the 25th, Ruth will come from Bangkok to give a lecture on the ASEAN connectivity.
Okay, good. And I think that maybe regarding the situation in Phnom Penh about the COVID-19, some trainees from Cambodia will join the session online, what is very nice, because they will not be able to work all together at the university. So they will join online the Thai communication session. Okay, so I think we can close the first 2 days plenary session.
Stéphane, you have a question.
We have a question now. Okay, welcome.
No, there's a question for you from Huynh Ho, Vietnam University, I think. So the question is, why did you spend 2 months for gray literature, but not white literature for your systematic review? Thanks.
Well, I don't think it's not well. Maybe I do not express myself in the correct way. We spent the first 2 months we include the gray literature in the process, but we was not focused on that at the beginning of the research. Right, Linh?
Yes, the main database we search on is World Online Database, like Web of Science, Science Direct, and several other. We have a list. Then the red literature is important in our region because we have certain data set like LAOFA or MyLab about Myanmar or different institutions and libraries. So that's why we had the team from 5 countries to help us with that. So red literature is part of the searching, but it's not the only.
Okay, yeah. And for the second question, we will upload on our website the materials, the slide and everything. So in the maybe the end of this month, beginning of March, it will be available. And I will add that on WANASIA website, and you can have the video of the restitution we did, the restitution of the Mekong research we did in Hanoi on December 18, last December. All things, all discussion was recorded. So you will be able to download the video and some slide we introduced today. So I hope I answer your question, Mr. Hafiz. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your participation. Please make sure that you can join us tomorrow afternoon.
Time, yeah.
Yes, at 2 p.m.
Yes. Okay. Have a good evening, and have a good and safe trip, Mr. Cheyenne, tomorrow morning, and talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 So nice to see you all.
Bye. See you tomorrow afternoon.
See you tomorrow.
Bye bye. See ya.
See you
Bye.
tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Dạ vâng, xin gái.
Bye bye. Bye bye everyone.
Bye chị Hằng.
Nhờ cô Diệp.
Why don't we take a
Oh.
break?
There should be more kids in front of the conference.
Yeah, no.
Well, I have like
Why don't we take a break for 10 minutes and I'll come back. We have two things to finish. First one is to do a wrap-up session, and then
by the way, he's talking to the Chiang Mai participants.
To Chiang Mai participants.
Unless you want to chat a little bit, otherwise we see each other tomorrow.
Is Kanchana still here? Kanchana? Cannot see Kanchana. Well, okay, anyway. I'll contact her. Okay, see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.